How's it going, everybody? So in this video, I just want to discuss briefly the question that a lot of people seem to have. Will cardiovascular exercise interfere with muscle mass and strength gains? Or will strength training and muscular training interfere with cardiovascular training, even to a high degree? Okay, so first of all, everybody needs to understand that's watching this video, I've been doing MMA and powerlifting for the last 2 years, okay, seriously training for the past 2 years. And I've looked at the research, and there's plenty of papers that show you actually benefit in both areas. You can increase strength and increase your VO2 max doing sprint training and high intensity anaerobic training, and even endurance training and long distance running. You can increase your performance in both areas when you run a specific concurrent periodization program. So when you train concurrently, as long as you keep up the intensity in both areas, and you don't approach your training with this mentality of, well, I need to train lighter on the strength so that I can recover for my endurance training, or I need to go light on my cardio so I can recover from my strength training. As long as you don't sacrifice your one training for the other, and you just approach both of them with the idea that you run a scientifically sound strength training program as well as a scientifically sound aerobic activity program, or scientifically sound running program, or sprinting program, or marathon running program. As long as you run proper programs for both, you can run them both on the side of each other and experience the same strength gains as you would, or the same gains and performance as you would if you ran them both individually. There might be a small decrease in performance, over the long term, but the science has shown that you can gain just as much strength while running while gaining aerobic capacity through marathon training and sprint training and aerobic training as you would just running a strength program by itself. So powerlifters just say, oh, I can't do that marathon running crap, I'm a powerlifter, or like, oh, I can't do cardio, sets of 5 are my cardio. That's just their excuse for not wanting to do cardio, and that's fine. They just want to tell themselves that it's actually bad for them when it's really not. It actually increases your work capacity, and there's actually studies that show increased muscle mass and increased strength, particularly from cycling. And I believe running as well, but cycling to a greater degree increases your leg strength and muscle mass. So you can actually increase the benefit. Of course, in the bigger picture, it might not be a huge difference, but there are a lot of top-level powerlifters who believe in cardiovascular training. And they have different ideas of them, obviously. Stan Efferding is one of them, depending on which information you're listening to. And he has some specific conditioning exercises for powerlifters, such as yoke walks and sets of 20 and stuff like that. And sets of 20 on squats can actually increase your cardiovascular conditioning in a similar way to aerobic work, but not to the same degree. I forgot exactly what the metrics were. I think it increased your VO2 max, but not nearly as much as cardiovascular exercise, which is an indication of increased work capacity and increased endurance and oxygen delivery, which is important for lifting weights. Now, obviously, if you're deadlifting 800 pounds, you're not going to be able to do a damn marathon the next day. Like, let's get real here. The type of program you run is going to have a big impact on the type of cardiovascular activity you can do. If you're doing high intensity or high volume, high intensity, or high frequency and high intensity strength training, like the Bulgarian method, for example, high frequency, high intensity, low volume. The Bulgarian method will run you into the curb, and I've actually had clients that were running a max effort style training, not Bulgarian, but they're running a max effort strength training program and increasing their deadlift every session. They went from 400 to 500 within a month, which is pretty incredible. And then we tried to get them to do high intensity running on the side so that they could lose body fat and whatnot. And their knees were just messed up from that. Mind you, this guy was, 250 pounds at the time, so that's a lot of weight to be crashing down on your knees. But yeah, so it's going to depend on your ability to recover and where you're at. But I know plenty of people that are competitive powerlifters. They do compete in the 190 class though, or they're like around 190, 200, walking around, and so they're like 190, 200 on training, and they'll be doing customized programming by their coaches. They're squatting and deadlifting. They're squatting 400 on a regular basis, deadlifting 550, 600 on a regular basis. 500 for reps, etc. Benching around 300, and they're also training for marathons and for running for like 5Ks and stuff like that. And I know a couple people who have won gold medals in 5Ks, and also they're winning powerlifting competitions at the same time. And obviously, training MMA, I know. The vast majority of MMA fighters, they're scared of doing strength training because they think it's going to ruin their recovery from MMA. Now, if you're weight cutting for a competition, that's completely different. It's impossible to even do your basic sport when you're weight cutting. It's hard. It's very challenging. When you're weight cutting, your whole body just shuts down. But if you're eating your normal diet, as long as you're eating enough calories to recover from each session, and you're eating the right, you got your diet dialed in with the quantity and quality of food, you should have no trouble recovering. And the few people that I know, and some people who I coached in particular, their strength and conditioning, they drastically increased their strength, they continued to build their skills in MMA, and had no problems recovering until they started weight cutting and came down with sickness and all sorts of other things. Even without the strength training, they get sick. But with the strength training, I'll admit that's very hard to recover from. And so when you're weight cutting, you definitely have to remove high intensity weight training, and even the more intense conditioning exercises are going to be very hard on the body and cause insomnia, especially if you don't get enough calories. So lots of things to consider, but for the average person especially, or people who don't have to cut down to abnormal amounts of body fat, for going from 170 down to 125 to compete in MMA. Seriously, really, weight cuts for MMA are extreme. If you're not doing that, you have no excuse to why you can't do, especially general cardio and conditioning. It's not going to ruin your gains. I'll link an article that also links to several references and studies, which I find fascinating, from a website called Stronger by Science, which everyone knows about. It's kind of like the common, mainstream place to go for strength science now. And they discuss all of this, and they have multiple references, and it's beautiful. The benefits of concurrent training, you can gain strength and cardiovascular capacity at the same time, so that's pretty awesome. And it liberates those of us like me who are addicted to training. So, because all these people, the overtraining police, oh, you can't do that, you're gonna rupture your knee tendon or something, you're gonna overtrain the CNS. It's we need some science to help us relieve ourselves of this addiction to training. So, or better yet, so that I can improve on MMA and powerlifting at the same time. So anyways, my experience is pretty much the same thing. Now I'll tell you, When I first started full-time MMA training again, which was in March of this year actually, so about 3 months ago, I had this nocebo effect, like, oh shoot, like I'm overtraining now. I've got to stop the powerlifting. And when I stopped the powerlifting, my lifts went down. And I started doing MMA, and then I was like, oh, I gotta recover from all the lifting now, because I'm overtrained. And so I cut down the frequency of my training sessions in MMA. And like looking back, I'm like, damn, I wasted so much time with this, oh, I'm overtraining, gotta stop overtraining mentality. While of course it might be valid, 1 week of just super light work is enough. I sacrificed my strength because I thought I needed to. And I sacrificed my MMA, my cardio, because I thought I needed to. And I just focused on skill. Cardio went down the crapper, and so did my strength, and even my form on a lot of my lifts. And I lost a lot of my squat mobility and things like that. And what I found is, because I've had periods of time where I would spar hard on a regular basis, and I also lift heavy, and I felt great. I felt like it, anecdotally, bro science, I felt like it increased my testosterone. I felt invincible. And I found doing Bulgarian training as well as just sparring hard, the basic, basically training with extreme specificity in both areas and leaving out all of the fluff work, just working up to maxes on my powerlifting and sparring as much as I can, training the actual skill at the intensity of the competition. I experienced the greatest gains in both skill and cardio and lifting on the planet, and I felt invincible. So makes you kind of like wonder. So I kind of feel like that's probably the best approach, at least for a certain period of time, until your body adapts to it. Then you gotta add more work, obviously. But anyway, so that's my take on it. There's a science in my own anecdotes. And I don't know, I get excited. I get kind of like a tingly feeling in my pants when I think about maxing out constantly on powerlifting and just sparring all the time. Like, I know that sounds weird, but for some reason, I don't know what is wrong with me, but I love that. And so many people tell me, oh, that's going to kill you or something, but anyway, all right, you guys, have a good day. Comment down below, subscribe for more health science videos, and I'll talk to you on the next video.